What up, infidels? It's the special Monday drop of the Dangerous Brown podcast. Nothing new here for you regular listeners. This is just a compilation of the Genesis episodes I did, so they're all in one place. And, for all the new people who heard maybe the later episodes and hadn't gone back or couldn't find the earlier chapters, I decided to put it all in one place for you guys so you can listen all the way through. This doesn't have like a number next to it if you're listening to the audio because I don't count it as an official episode. Look at me, la-di-da. But this is a compilation of all the Genesis episodes. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you for our Wednesday check-in in a couple days. Later, Sleeper Cell. Love you, infidels. Peace. Guys, I'm going to go through the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran slowly but surely on here. Might take a couple of years to get through all of that. I'm fully aware of that. But I think it's time to start. And we're going to start with Genesis today. Yep. Here on the Dangerous Brown podcast, we're going to go through all of the Old Testament, New Testament, Quran, maybe even the Book of Mormon, and then maybe even whatever the Hindus read, the Bhagavad Gita, whatever it's called. And I will say this. I think I subscribe to Genesis's, the book, because we're going to start with Genesis today. And I think I subscribe to Genesis's theory about how humans came about, more so than the Big Bang. I mean, if you think about it, if we just start with two people, Adam and Eve, all the incest it takes to get to Noah, and then all the humans get wiped out under Noah, and then all the incest it takes to get to where we are now, 7 billion people, from two people, twice. It would explain why every single person I've met, including me, is fucking retarded. We're all dumb as shit. And inbreeding can explain all of that. I've never really thought about it until I started reading it. And then I was like, oh, damn. That makes sense. That truly, truly, truly makes sense. So, chapter 1. I realized that Genesis has like 50 chapters, so there's no way I'm going to get through all of it today. I might go like 25 chapters by 25 chapters, because there's a lot to unpack here. At first I was like, oh, the Bible, it's whatever. It's old, it's like lame. It's kind of boring. I mean, I will say this. When I read the Bible in school, I had to read it in the King James version, which is hard to understand. So what I'm doing now is I downloaded an app which has like a bunch of versions on it, and I'm reading the new translation because obviously, why would I read the King James version? I guess to like make it more real, but fuck it. I've never said the word forsooth before. Why would I try to understand a version of the Bible that's, verily, or whatever the fuck they used back then. Thusly. My dad just texted me, are you done? Am I done? Can you not hear me yelling? That's awesome. All right. Chapter 1 is, the creation. It's God just creating stuff. And you realize that, I realized almost immediately that God, and I'm sure many people have realized this, as a literary character, God being all-powerful is a very convenient way to get around all the plot holes, right? So in the first couple days, he'll create something until evening, and then he'll rest for the night, right? But on day 3, day 4, he creates the evening and the night. So, as a character, he works to create during conditions that doesn't exist. But if you're if you add it in post later, he's an all-powerful being, time and space don't matter to him, then it covers that plot hole. So already you have to overlook, if you're a logical person, you kind of have to overlook some stuff. If you like to break down books and be like, hey, what's going on here? You really have to overlook some stuff. It just is what it is, Like on day 6, he creates humans and tells them to go forth and multiply. But then in chapter 2, we finally get Adam and Eve. right? So he creates the humans, tells them to multiply, tells them to go forth, meaning that he let them free. And then chapter 2, the next chapter, well, now we're in the garden. There's no place to go forth. You're in the garden. Unless he means go forth and multiply in the garden. But, the vibe in chapter 1, he means go forth throughout the world and multiply. Right? And then there's like a, he's a little bit, God seems very much like Loki, like the trickster god. Like, he puts the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden, telling them not to eat it, but he knows they're going to eat it, so why even put it there? Clearly, you want some shit to go down. That's why you did it. Right? So, chapter 2, he put, oh, no, sorry. Chapter 3, she eats the apple. But chapter 2, he puts down the tree of knowledge, I believe. Yeah, put this tree in the garden. And then he creates, this is what I'm interested in. This is what's an interesting part of the Bible right here. He creates women. This is Genesis 2:21. He creates women to be the helpers of man. Right? And then in chapter 3, when she eats the apple, Eve's punishment is that she will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. Right? Which is a very, like, if you watch sitcoms, that's a very much the stereotype of the husband and wife relationship, right? You have the lazy husband who's sort of the king of the household, or the breadwinner, the leader of the household, and he's, head of the house. But then you have this wife who is, like, controlling him, and she's, in a lot of sitcoms, she's naggy. She's super hot always. It's always a hot wife, dopey husband. But she's, like, and she's super on him, and she seems super in his business. She controls, And I wonder if that archetype exists because our whole American society is sort of based on this. The control your husband, but he rules over you. You know what I mean? Like, and our other societies, like let's go back to like ancient Egypt, where it's not based off this type of creation story. It's another creation story, which, I'm sure the power of balance of men and women are a little bit different than it is here. If their society felt the same way about women. Or is the Bible a commentary on what the people, or what whoever wrote this sees around him? You know what I mean? At the risk of dipping my toe into sexist territory, is this, and I've never been in a relationship, but is this what relationships have kind of been? Long-term relationships have kind of been always over time? Or is our idea of a relationship based on this? What came first, the chicken or the egg? And then he cast them out over Egypt. And this is what I read this and it made me laugh because I used to watch these History Channel things about we're looking for the Garden of Eden. Where was the Garden of Eden? And I know Mormons thinks it's in Jackson County, Missouri, or whatever, or something like that. And then like archaeologists have gone all over the Middle East looking for the Garden of Eden. But there's an easy way to figure out where the Garden of Eden is. Genesis 3:24. God said he protects the Garden of Eden with a swinging flaming sword. So hey History Channel, all those places that you were like, could this have possibly been the Garden of Eden? Was there a giant flaming sword guarding it? Then no. It wasn't the Garden of Eden. Simple. Just read the book. This is a crazy book if you take it literally. It's insane. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's fucking nuts. It's pretty interesting. I will say it reads like a fantasy book. And like at a time where there were probably no books like this would have been mind-blowing. Chapter 4, Cain kills Abel. And then God says anyone who kills Cain gets 7 times the punishment. But it's like anyone who kills Cain is going to be Cain's kid. If he kills Abel, there's only 2 people. So that means Adam and Eve, like he had to have kids with his sisters. And anyone who's mad that he killed Abel would be his own children. As far as I'm concerned, because the Genesis goes through like here's a lineage of people. Like he begot, like he is the father for this, and he is the father of this. From what I remember, I don't remember Abel having any children. So no one's going to kill Cain. And then, yeah. That's the big one. You know, they talk about what a Cain's ancestor who also kills a guy who, you know, at some point he's probably related to. But you know, that's the big chapter 4 thing that happens. Chapter 5, that's where we're created in God's image, and you find out how a lot of people like Adam lived till 930 years old. You know, and then you follow Adam's lineage down to Noah. And then chapter 6 is the Noah story. First, God does his weird trickster bullshit where he shortens people's lives for zero reason. Everyone's living to be 900 years old, and then God's like, I can't have this for whatever the fuck reason, which is a good thing. Can you imagine if we had a senator that's been in the Senate for 300 years, and he still has another 300 to 600 years left to live? Like, I get why you would do that from a political sense, but like, why? There's no reason, and he just was like, people live too long, I'm going to make their lives short. Except he doesn't. You'll find out later Abraham lives to like... Abraham has kids at like 100-something years old. But it's just... God makes these decisions unilaterally and no one can challenge him because he's God. And it's like... It makes... You know, you're trying to make the story interesting if you're looking at it at a literary sense. But like, you know, you could just write some stuff to make people live shorter. You know? Like a virus. Who wrote this? Moses, supposedly? Come on, Moses. You know, I feel like you're using God as a cop-out here a little bit. But then again, back at 0, wherever he wrote this negative, what did he write this? Like 3500 BC or whatever the fuck, I guess. This is how you advance the plot forward. You're like, well, I can't think of any reason to do this. Let's just add God to it, and that'll explain everything. So yeah, chapter 6 through 8, you see the Noah story. My favorite part about this is that it gives the dimensions of the boat. The boat is like, according to my translation, is 450 feet by 75 feet by 45 feet. There must have been like 6 animals at that time. Explains why there's no dinosaurs. There's clearly no room for dinosaurs. He had to make a judgment call. He was like, I guess I'll give all the mammals and smaller reptiles some room, but dinosaurs, my bad, you're out. But he does the dove tests in chapter 8. The way he tests to see if it's ready to come back by land. It's like the way Noah tests to see if it's ready, if they're ready to go on land, is sort of like WALL-E. Do you remember WALL-E? The whole point is that if a plant can grow on Earth, the humans can come back. Well, Noah's test was like if he lets a dove go and the dove doesn't come back, that means the dove found land and it's safe for humans to go back on land, right? But if there's doves, that means the dinosaurs have already evolved at this point, right? So now we live in a world where either the dinosaurs have already evolved, or God has just placed dinosaur fossils around the earth to trick later humans, which, judging by this Old Testament God, is something he definitely would have done. That's definitely like in his zone of shit to do. In chapter 9, something crazy happens. So Noah drinks a lot of wine, and one of his sons sees him naked. And because that sounded very priesty. It's not like he tried to fuck one of his sons. No. He drinks some wine. He gets so drunk he passes out naked. You know, because whatever. It's wine. And Noah saved the human race and all the planets, so let him live his life, you know? And one of his sons sees him naked. And then, because his son saw him naked, he curses that son's entire lineage. What? Hey, Noah, it's your fault that you got that fucked up on wine. You're not a freshman in college anymore. Learn how to handle your alcohol. What are you talking about? Sure, it's embarrassing, but to curse his entire lineage is insane. And that son's name was Epstein. No, I'm kidding. The son's name was Ham, which is hilarious. And, yeah. He cursed his entire lineage. Insanity. Insanity. His youngest son, too, the baby. I think it's his youngest son. Either way. What? Also, it's great that Ham is a Christian name, and I can't believe. Well, I can believe there aren't a bunch of people named Ham because that is a cursed name. Just because you saw your dad naked, everyone's seen their dad naked accidentally. Everyone, every single person. There's no way they haven't. You've lived with your parents, if you have a dad, I guess. Shout out to all the people with no dads. Chapter 10, you just see the lineage of Noah's sons. That's about it. There's a lot of names that don't really matter or kind of matter. A lot of weird names. A lot of how come the people choose Sarah as a biblical name, but choose one of these crazier ones. I want to see Abimelech or whatever. Nimrod. That's a good biblical name. The great hunter Nimrod. How did that become It sucks for him. He got the short end of the stick historically. Because according to Genesis, he was a great hunter, but that just became a way to call someone stupid. I guess no one uses the word Nimrod anymore, but I'm sure at one point it was popular to call someone dumb Nimrod. And then chapter 11, you see the Tower of Babel, and that's humanity's able to they're all able to communicate with itself. People are all able to talk to themselves, talk to everybody because they all have this one historical language. And then the Lord splits them up seemingly for no reason. The Lord just stops the Tower of Babel, and I guess it's because they were building towards heaven, I guess, but I thought heaven even in this sort of version wasn't a physical place that the living could get to. It didn't seem that way, and he just breaks them up for no reason, and then splits them up, and everyone talks differently, and then now people have a hard time communicating, and then they fight forever, just because God fucking felt like it, dude. Old Testament God is an asshole. He's an asshole in in a way that a funny asshole is an asshole, but still an asshole, you know? It is sort of funny, just humanity's cooperating to just split them up all of a sudden, and now they all can't communicate, and they all start fighting. That's pretty funny, cosmically, but it's also a dick thing to do. Humanity was getting along at this point, it seemed. You'd all wiped them out during Noah. You wiped out all the bad ones during Noah's time, and they were able to rebuild. I mean, there's no way the 6,000 year thing. I don't know how you can read this and also think the world is 6,000 years old. If Adam lived to 930 something and he had all these ancestors before he got to Noah and they all lived to 900 whatever, Noah's the first one he gets to where he's okay, maybe this 900 thing is kind of long. That means the flood would have happened, what? 2,000 years ago? We would have heard of that. We had a vague idea that what was going around 0 AD. Or 0 BC, Jesus was alive. That's how the timing of this would work out. But hey, I get why. I had a Christian friend in college, and she said, the worst thing for your faith is to read the book. Because if you read it any sort of critically, you have to read this all as allegories. They all have to be allegories. But if you read this all as allegories, you can't think, then that means in the back of your mind, you have to be this isn't real. This is all just stories. This is as real as Harry Potter. You know? Thanks for the one person on TikTok who sat through all of this. Not a lot of interaction today on TikTok. Mostly just Derek talking to me. But it is what it is. Sometimes I get a lot. Last 2 weeks I got a lot, so it makes sense I didn't get this much. I'm also just yelling about the Bible, so who wants to really sit through that? But the Tower of Babel, and that's where we first meet Abraham, but he's not Abraham. He's Abram right now. He is, he is the first step of if he's the Pokemon evolution, he's Squirrel right now. He has not become Abraham yet. And then he meets his wife, Sarah. But she's not Sarah yet. She's Sarai. And so the Tower of Babel happens. We meet Abraham. and 11 chapters. That's good enough for today, because then the story of Abraham is a lot. There's a guy named Lot in the story too, for those of you who don't know. Story of Abraham spans what? 15 chapters, 14 chapters. That's a more interesting story. It makes sense that a lot of the chapters, a good amount of Genesis is based on him, because Abraham is the father of the three religions, right? They all look at Abraham as like, this is the guy, so it makes sense that they spend a lot of time on him. But yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna do for today. That's the first 11 chapters of Genesis, guys. So we ended on Genesis in the Tower of Babel, chapter 11. The Lord splits them up, and then this is the first time we meet Abraham, right? Or just Abram now. I never knew that. I think I talked about it last time. It's like I never knew that Abraham was a different name at first. It's if you enjoy it, why leave the wall? Man, I don't know. This is you just don't enjoy not being famous. That's on you. Yeah, that's probably true. That's part of it. Yeah, I don't enjoy. I guess I don't enjoy like I'm not enjoying the like, man, this is not I feel like I'm doing this for nobody, which is untrue. People still, I'm interacting with people online. My podcast gets views. I shouldn't be that negative, but you already won. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that. That's all I'm saying. All right. So we're in chapter 12. I should have reread this. You know what? Because I read this like a week ago and I took notes on it, and then now I'm looking at it like, what the fuck was Abraham? Why did Abraham move to Egypt? But so he moves on Egypt. Abraham's nephew Lot is traveling with him, and then so this is what I like about chapter 12, because you see this all the time. Not all the time, but you see this a lot in the next few chapters of Genesis. So they move into a new land, and then the Pharaoh of the new land. So they move into Egypt, and then the Pharaoh is like, "Oh, look at Sarai, Abraham's wife. She's so hot." So Abraham tells the Pharaoh that Sarah's his sister, so the Pharaoh won't kill him and take his wife. And so the Pharaoh's like, "Oh, I'll give you all these gifts so Sarah can be my wife." And then God gets mad at the Pharaoh for taking someone else's wife. And then the Pharaoh gets mad at Abraham for telling him that his wife was actually his sister. And you see that play out. This is the first time in 3 times that someone lies about someone being their wife in the next couple chapters. It's an interesting little, I don't know what that means. You know what it is? I was listening to myself talk about Genesis last week, and I didn't like how critical I was being, because I was trying to look at it literally, which is maybe not the best way to look at it. Clearly not the best way to look at it. But I guess I was taking it literally because a lot of people do take it literally, and I wanted to break that down. And that's probably not the right way to look at it. It's not meant to be taken that way. And it sounded like I was coming off as anti-God or whatever. And I'm not truly anti-God. And so I just hated listening to myself talking about it, where it's it's just a story. I should take it as a story. Because to me, I was in the story of Abraham. I was in all the way. I kept reading through okay, what happens next? Right? So that's chapter 12, the whole Egypt situation. Abraham gets to keep, so all the gifts the Pharaoh gives Abraham to keep his wife, to get his wife, Abraham gets to keep, but he has to leave Egypt. So Abraham and his nephew Lot, off those gifts, become super rich. And then because of their richness, the people under them start fighting. So in chapter 13, they separate and Lot goes to live in Sodom. Chapter 15, that's chapter 13. Chapter 14, there's a war between different regions. There's a lot of different regions with a lot of random people that just sort of pop up throughout Genesis. It's always sort of a theme. Lot gets captured. Abraham saves him. Chapter 15, the Lord promises Abraham a son, even though him and Sarah have not conceived yet. It seems like my man Abraham is shooting blanks. You know? And chapter 16, the next chapter, Abraham finally has a son with one of like his wives. So his wife Sarah offers one of her maids or one of her slaves, like, hey, take this person to be your wife. Her name is Hagar. And so Abraham has a son with Hagar, and then she acts all uppity about it because she has, I have a son. And then Sarah gets mad. Sarah's like, what? Why the fuck? Why the fuck is she getting treated so good? She was just a sort of lowly slave. She's only there for your son. And so they like clash, and they have to send Hagar and Ishmael away. Like that's Abraham's first son is Ishmael. So let's send him away. You know what it is? It's a real shitty move on Sarah's part. Don't offer him your like maiden or whatever to get pregnant, and then get mad that she gets pregnant. You offered. It was your choice. It's not like someone forced you to do it. I don't know. Ever since then, this chapter 16, I looked at Sarah a little differently. I kind of, don't fuck with her that much. I thought that was a bitch. I thought that was a little bit of a bitch move. If I'm being all the way honest. Let's see. All right. Chapter 17 that's when Abraham officially becomes Abraham. So up until this, and Sarah officially becomes Sarah. So up until this, right? Abraham is Abram, Sarah is Sarai. Abraham. God's like, here, you are now Abraham. So it's almost like Abram is Abraham's Squirtle, and now he's Blastoise. He's just sort of evolved. He's made like a Pokemon evolution. That's what's happening. And then in 17, God makes a covenant with Abraham, and the first thing that he mentions in the covenant is that everyone must be circumcised. I thought that was hilarious, bro. Dudes were always thinking about dicks, huh? That came out way wrong. But you know what? Dudes are always thinking about dicks. Yo, what up, Sharif? Just talking about Genesis, chapter 17. How tall am I? How tall do you think I am? What do you think my height is? Now I'm curious. It matters. I always tell height matters. You know what it is? I wish it didn't, but it does. I wish I could be super tall. Oh, God, to know what you 6-footers feel like. Oh, you think I'm 6 foot? Oh, God bless your heart. I'm 5'5", 5'6". Oh, awful. I always, like on Tinder and Bumble, I always make sure I let them know how tall I am. Because some people don't care, and some people do. And so I just want to manage expectations right away. But yeah. Oh, man, I dream of being fucking 6 foot. Just to walk into a room and be like, hey guys, let's fuck, or whatever the fuck 6 foot people interact. You're 6'6", good lord. Good lord, that's good. That's good. That might be a little too tall. And Somalian, well, that's a bad combination in America. But are you American? All right, I'll wait for you to get back on that. 6'6" is tall. I think the perfect height is like 6'2". That would be if I could like pick a height. I think I would go 6'2". That seems to be like a good. You're not too big, but you're tall, but you're not too tall. That seems pretty. Oh no, British. Okay. Are you guys? Now this might be a racist question to ask, but were you refugees at some point? Because whenever I feel like I see a Somalian in the West, it's a refugee situation. I could be very wrong about that. That's why I'm asking. All right, I'll come back to you in a second. This is YH. I'm assuming that means yes. Okay. Are you personally a refugee? Like, are you specific, or was it like a family thing, and now you were born British? That's what. Also, remember me when you're famous. I mean, that's gonna be so far away if I'm ever famous. You know what I mean? I just started this earlier by talking about a crisis of confidence I was having in this whole situation. You were born in Britain. All right, so you're British. Okay. Okay. So you're sort of first generation refugee, man. That's rough. Where are you from? I'm American. All right. I was talking about Abraham, but now I got sidetracked off to the TikTok. Just like, okay, that's interesting. But yeah, are there any Somalian people in the West that aren't refugees? Like, is there any like regular immigrants from Somalia? I know, again, fucked up question to ask, but I'm curious. I just want to know where are the regular Somalians at? Can you immigrate? Can you become? Is pirating a skill you can immigrate off of? Do they still have pirates over there? Remember when Somalian pirates were huge? I'm the captain now. I feel like I don't hear about them anymore. Did they get fucked up by COVID too? Are they like, oh, we can't pirate right now. We got to social distance. If there's any Somalian pirates, hit me up. Tell me what you're up to. That's the idea is so funny to me. Like, oh, we can't pirate. We gotta stay 6 feet apart. It's hard. You can't pirate 6 feet apart. I will say that. That's very hard. Swashbuckling isn't a social distance thing, it feels like. It feels like you gotta be close to people to swashbuckle. Who knows? I could be wrong. I've never been a pirate. So, chapter 18, that's when Genesis 18 is when the Lord decides to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And, so Abraham asked God, like, hey, will you destroy Sodom and Gomorrah if there's 50 righteous? And God's like, no. And Abraham works him down all the way to 3 righteous. Right? And God's like, if there's 3 righteous people in Sodom and Gomorrah, I won't do it. But you show me those 3 righteous people. And it's like, hey, God, you're God. You should know how many righteous people are in Sodom and Gomorrah. You're fucking God. You know everything. It's so weird to me about God in Genesis, especially in these first 18 chapters, is that he knows everything, but then he'll like act like he doesn't. Like the previous chapter, in chapter 17, when Sarah's told that she's about to have a baby at 90 years old, Sarah laughs. And God's like, why are you laughing, Sarah? Well, what do you mean, God? You know why. You're fucking God. What's this weird, like, 1-2 step game that you play? Like, I don't quite understand what's going on. I mean, when we get to Exodus, we'll see this even more. But there's a lot of, like, weird sort of thoughts or moves that God makes that's just so random to me. All right. So chapter 19. This is my favorite. Christianity is so flawed. Yeah, I mean, they're all flawed. That's why you're supposed to go off faith. You're not supposed to read the books. You're supposed to go off what some guy who teaches the book is saying, right? But this is my favorite. Chapter 19. So this is the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So, some angels come into, I believe, Sodom, right? And they go to Lot's house. And so all these guys see these angels go to Lot's house, and they all bang on Lot's door like, hey, we want to fuck these angels in the ass. Which, let's be honest, this is the plot to an amazing gay porn. I can't believe I can't believe Bible-based porn isn't huge. I mean, I can believe it because it's like blasphemous or whatever. But like, oh my God, this could easily be a porn. So they see, so all these guys see these angels go to Lot's house. They bang on the door, say, hey, we want to fuck these new guys in the ass. Lot then says, don't fuck these guys in the ass. Here, take my 2 virgin daughters instead. So porny. And they're like, no, we want to fuck these dudes in the ass. And I feel bad for the daughters. Their father just offered them up to a raving, horny crowd. Right? And I feel bad for them until later in the chapter, after they escape Sodom and Gomorrah, they straight up rape their dad. They see him sleeping in a cave, and they're like, well, we got to fuck our dad because our mom died. She looked back, turned into a pillar of salt, so let's just fuck our dad while he's asleep and have his kids. So, how bad do I really feel for them at the end of this chapter? They go through a lot. In chapter 19, they go through a character arc. It is a lot that is going on with Lot. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is pretty intense. Also, God, why did you let Sodom and Gomorrah get to that point? Same thing with when he killed Noah, or he not killed Noah. He killed everyone in Noah's time. Why did you let the earth get to the point where it was like this? Yes, you finally caught me on a stream. What up, dog? Literally just talking about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Love your podcast. Thank you, bro. Keep listening. I appreciate it. Man, maybe that's a good place to put stop right there. I think I'll stop with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. But it's an interesting. So we're like almost halfway through. We're more than halfway through the Abraham story. But yeah, that's dude. Someone needs to make Bible porn. Oh my God. Just that whole situation. The angels come to Sodom. They go to Lot's house. All the guys surround Lot's house and want to fuck the angels. Lot instead offers his 2 virgin daughters. They say no. Give us those angels to fuck. Boom, bro. It's easy to make a porn out of that. Oh my God. It would be so simple. It would be a gay and straight porn at once. Someone should get on this. Someone should get on this. I mean, if I had an in the porn world, I would write these. It's so simple. Genesis porn. There's a couple porny things. There's a couple porny situations. You're about to find another one in a couple chapters ahead that's like, oh, that's also really porny. I think there's a lane here. And like the furor and the uproar of it would just be free advertisement. If you were like, hey, I'm making Bible porn, you know how mad people will get? People are going to get that. People are going to get mad just by me saying it. Fuck yeah, thank you, Bach. That's so funny. I was literally having a crisis of conscience earlier, and then, Bach, some guy, I have never met you, so you love the podcast and you want me to keep up the content, and it's crazy how things come full circle. It's crazy how things come full circle sometimes, man. I was feeling like shit, and I was not feeling like shit, but, moments of doubt. I'm human, and you fucking threw a ball. I don't know. You caught the ball I was throwing. I don't even know the right metaphor for that. But yeah. Dude. That's so crazy. Okay. Yeah. Wait, okay. So let me go over this one more time because I forgot the second part of this. So the first part of the porn, right? One more time. We're going to go over it. First part of the porn. Angels come to Lot's house, right? Everyone in Sodom bangs on the door. We want to fuck these angels, right? And then so the first, then the guys would fuck outside, and then Lot would be like, here's my 2 virgin daughters, and then they would be like, no, and then the guys would fuck some more, and then Lot gets drunk, and he's passed out in the cave, and he gets maybe stuck in the cave, and they're like, Dad, why are you stuck in the cave? And the daughters fuck him. That would be the porno, I think. I don't know. I would need some time to write it out. I'm excited about this idea. And this, if anyone has an into the porn writing world, let me know. Link me up because the story of Lot it's right there for you, man. It is right there for you. I mean, for sure, you have to be comfortable with going to hell. Like if it exists, that's where we're going. But oh my God. It's written for us. The story is there. That's so funny. Oh God, that's just a porn right away. Hey, speaking of gay porn, I'm genuinely curious. Is gay porn okay? Sorry. So let me answer this question first. How are you talking about the Bible? I think you mentioned it that episode. Yeah, I am. I'm going. Like I said, I'm going through all the um chapters because I'm just trying to learn about all the sort of shit, right? And yeah, so right now we just finished Genesis 19. That's where I'm stopping. But and if you read Genesis 19, what I'm saying is I can make a great porn, gay and straight at the same time. So it's been a while since we've talked about the Bible. Um, we've done Genesis chapter 1 through 19. Um, so I think 19. Man, I forgot. I should have wrote this down. I think 19. We have Sodom and Gomorrah. And then Lot and his wife gets turned to salt, and then his daughters rape him. 19 was wild. 20 through 30 is pretty wild as well. So, chapter 20, you start with Abraham goes to like the Philistines, and he sees there's this king in the area that he wants to stay called Abimelech, and so he tells Abimelech that his wife Sarah is his sister, and so Abimelech takes Sarah as his wife, and then God comes down and said, "This woman's already married. You can't marry this person." And Abimelech is like, "Oh, come on! He tricked me. He told me it was his sister," which he has a fair point. So God was like, "You're right. Return Sarah to Abraham, and I'll lift my curse that I put on you." And God, this is what I don't like. God put a curse on Abimelech's, or I don't even know if that's how you say it, but Abimelech's female servants. So while Sarah was his wife, his female servants couldn't have babies. And I've mentioned this before. You see this a story over and over and over again in the Bible, and it just seems like women are these sort of afterthoughts, these sort of bargaining chips. I mean, they're clearly lower on the totem pole than men, and I very much wonder if if I guess this will sound messed up, but if that is a function of some weird natural, not so some weird biological thing that like men have to view, it's hardwired in our brains for men to view women like this, or if it's a weird cultural thing, meaning if there was a more balanced book where the gender powers were more equal, if there was a more balanced book, sorry, my phone's going off. If there was a more balanced book where like the gender powers are equal, would our society, at least when it comes to in the terms of men and women, be a little more balanced? You know, I guess that's food for thought. But that's chapter 20. Chapter 21, Sarah finally has her own child. She has Isaac. We meet Isaac. She sees Ishmael, the son of her servant that Abraham has, with her servant Hagar, make fun of Isaac. So she makes Abraham send them away, and he does. Which, I mean, Sarah, you're kind of being a huge bitch there. You know? Chapter 22 is the sacrifice story. You know, the famous one. Chapter 22 is when God tells Abraham to take Isaac up to the mountain or whatever. I just read this too. Up to the mountain and sacrifice him. And, Abraham, no hesitation, dog. The dude was cold-blooded, dude. He was like Steph Curry shooting a three, homie. He was like, I'm just going to do this. No questions asked. This is what I do. And God stops him and gives him a sheep to sacrifice instead, a ram to sacrifice instead. He sacrifices the ram. And here's my question. There's a lot of sheep and ram sacrifices in the Old Testament. And how come we don't do that anymore? How come we don't sacrifice the sheep and ram anymore? Because we follow some Old Testament rules. Hell, we wouldn't let gay people marry for the longest time because it said so in Leviticus. But why do we keep that Old Testament rule and not the sheep-ram sacrifice? Maybe 2020 would be a little better if we all just built an altar and sacrificed a ram. Why do we get to keep the gay one and not the sheep one? Oh, we can't have gay weddings because it's against the Bible. Hey, all weddings are gay. You ever been to a wedding and been like, this is kind of gay? They're all like that, man. But yeah, it is awesome how just quickly Abraham is just willing to just do it. He has, blind faith in God, which is, I guess, what you're supposed to have. That's the sort of lesson it's teaching you. Chapter 23, Sarah dies. Abraham makes a deal there on Hittite land, apparently. And he makes a deal with the Hittite to bury her. I'm using the new translation, like a new sort of modern English translation. The King James Bible translation is called the Hittite son of Heth, which is way more badass. And I was looking through, just reading through a little bit of the King James Bible, and the King James Bible is a little more metal sounding, a little more hardcore and cooler. The new one just makes it sound a bit more informational. There is a point in this new translation where it says he buys the land to bury Sarah, adjusted for the market standard, or adjusting for the market standard, or using the market something. The words market standard are there, which is like a little bit like a little capitalism-y. Feels like it's a little bit of spin. Market standard? Were they using those words back then? Market standard seems like a stock term, not a 3000 BC term. But, who knows? Maybe they're all just capitalists back then, Let's see. Okay. So Abraham we're now in chapter 24. Abraham wants a servant to go back to his homeland to bring back a wife for his son Isaac, because he doesn't want Isaac to marry one of these, these foreign bitches. Ooh, God forbid he marries someone outside of his race. So the servant goes all the way back to his homeland, and he takes a camel with him, and he's in the land, and he has this weird sort of like test for a woman, where he goes, if a woman draws water for me and draws water for my camel, then they are good enough to marry. And which, it's weird, like, obviously, not obviously, I was gonna say obviously love should involve tests like that, but maybe it should. I don't know. I've never been in love, so what do I know? But something about that really stuck out to me. Like, maybe not that specific anyways, but I think there is a sort of factor about love that, like, oh wow, she drew water for my camel. I wasn't expecting that. It's that Beauty and the Beast song. So one person bends unexpectedly. That's an unexpected bend. No one gives me water for my camel. That's interesting. And then that's sort of what we're all looking for, huh? Really, at the end of the day, we're all looking for someone who brings water for your camel. Some more literally than others. If you look like me, it's probably a more literal statement than if you don't. And basically, so this woman named Rebecca, I say woman, she's a girl, because they describe her as old enough to be married, but still a virgin, which is a great way to get around saying how old she actually is. Because what does that mean during this time? Does that mean she's 20? I feel like that's a modern take on that time. 3000 BC, she could be like 8 years old. Who knows? But they specifically don't mention their age. They definitely mention every other person's. They always mention the dude's age. That's for sure. Isaac, I think, is like 40 at this time. So whatever it is, that there is an age gap here. That is for sure. Rebecca passes the camel test. What we're all looking for in life, someone to pass that camel test. And then, so the servant was like, I gotta bring her back, and her family was like, oh, we'll let you take her, but can you please let her stay for 10 days? And she's like, nope. And then they bring her back, and then he brings her back to Isaac. Isaac sees her, pretty much falls in love with her, and they sleep together. I would say that he comforts her, because Sarah's dead, right? And they say they meet in like his mom in Sarah's tent, Isaac's mom's tent, and she was a great comfort to him, which is, Bible code for sex. The Bible is like really smutty. There's a lot of these sex things going on that are like kind of crazy. I mean, this is like they're having sex in Isaac's dead mom's tent. And I think I've said this before. There's got to be someone's got to make this, there's got to be some Genesis porn. Because this is, This is a perfect scenario for porno. It really is. This would be one of the more sensitive ones, where Sodom and Gomorrah would be like one of those rough ones. This is more like a sensitive one, and they're in love, and it's like, oh, look at these two people enjoying one another. Chapter 25, Abraham takes another wife and dies. Rebecca can't have kids, and then she's like, God, give me kids. And God was like, okay, I'll give you kids. Which, you didn't need to add that part. Just give Rebecca the kids. That seems mean. It seems mean to not let her have kids and just wait for her to ask you. It seems a little rude. Rebecca's kids are fighting in the womb, and God says because they're fighting in the womb, they will be rivals. And then you have Esau and Jacob born. They're like twins. Esau is the firstborn. He's born a little bit ahead of Jacob. And one day, this is still chapter 25, Esau wants some stew, and Jacob will only give him the stew if Esau gives up his right for being the firstborn. And Esau agrees, which is a little short-sighted on Esau's part. You think Jacob, your brother, is going to let you starve? Also, even if you don't get the stew, go ahead and have a day where you don't have lunch. That's not worth your firstborn status. As a firstborn, I'm aware of how much that status means in modern times. It's not like a huge deal, but back in these times, oh my God. You've mortgaged away your future for some stew. I'm not a big Esau and Jacob fan. I like Esau a little more than Jacob, because Jacob, as we'll see, is a little bit manipulative-y. And Esau's bitter, but Esau has kind of more of a right to be bitter. We'll find out. We only have 5 more chapters to go through. Chapter 26, Isaac goes back to the Philistine area where Abimelech was with his wife, and does the sister, tells Abimelech like, oh, she's not my wife, she's my sister, because he's worried that basically they always tell Abimelech they're with their sister instead of their wives, because they're worried that if he tells them that, oh, Rebecca's my wife, I'll get murdered and he'll take Rebecca. So he won't murder me for my sister. So he does the same thing, and then Abimelech tries to take Rebecca in as his wife, and then Abimelech, quote unquote, catches them caressing, which again, super porny. This is what we called cuckold porn in the industry that I'm not a part of. Yo, on some real, I know there's, again, our sleeper cell is small but growing, so I know there's like 7 of you now. If you know anyone who writes in porn, let me know, because I got some stories for them. So Abimelech catches him caressing and goes, oh man, I can't believe you pulled the same thing your dad did on me. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, you can't fool the fooler, And so Abimelech pretty much kicks him out, pretty much says, Isaac, I can't believe you did this to me. And then Isaac becomes rich somehow. And Abimelech kicks him out for being too rich. And then you have Esau has 2 wives that what am I saying? Oh yeah, sorry. Esau has 2 wives, so Isaac's oldest born, and they make life hard for Isaac and Rebecca. That's what they say. Because they're like Hittite women or whatever. They're these foreign women, and you know these foreign women always causing problems. Ugh, foreign women, huh? So chapter 27, Isaac is dying. He's blind. He can't see anything. So he tells Esau to go out and kill a boar or whatever, or kill a goat, kill something, and make Isaac's favorite meal, and Isaac will give him a blessing. Now, Rebecca overhears that Esau's about to get a blessing, so she was like, I don't want Esau to get a blessing because he has these damn foreign wives, and everyone knows foreign women suck. So she helps Isaac trick a blind Jacob into thinking that he's Esau, and Isaac gives Jacob what is supposed to be Esau's blessing. Which, this is why I don't like Isaac. It's some, like, you're on some, like, weird, like, tricky stuff, some weird Loki business that I'm not a big fan of. Esau gets a secondary blessing because apparently Jacob only has one blessing to give because God making arbitrary rules. And so Isaac is mad. I mean, Esau is mad at Jacob because, you know, Jacob already has his firstborn right, which he gave up for some stew, which is your fault, Esau. And now he took his blessing. So Esau wants to kill Isaac. But Rebecca overhears Esau trying to kill Isaac because I guess Esau's just sort of talking to himself out loud like an idiot. And Rebecca hears this and sends Isaac away. And she ends the chapter by saying she is sick of the Hittite women that are Esau's son. So the theme of chapter 27 is Rebecca overhears everything. Rebecca is just constantly eavesdropping. I think Rebecca means eavesdropper in Aramaic or whatever language the Bible was written in the beginning. Esau finally marries a non-Hittite woman who's not his cousin because he's like, oh man, who is his cousin? Esau marries his cousin, but she's not a Hittite. So Rebecca's finally like, oh, finally, a non-foreign girl, I get what I want. That's pretty much the big thing. Jacob has a vision of God, and it's just standard vision of God stuff. Go forth and multiply. I'll give your descendants a nation, yada, 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 yada. So chapter 29, Jacob arrives to where Rebecca lived when she was found to be Isaac's wife. Jacob arrives in the same place to find a wife. And at this well near the sheep, he sees his uncle's daughter. So Rebecca's brother's daughter, Rachel. And he falls in love with his cousin. Just head over heels in love. And to earn her love, he works for Rachel's dad, his uncle. His name is Laban, for 7 years to earn Rachel's hand in marriage. Now, Rachel has an older sister named Leah, who, according to the Bible, is an uggo. That's the best way to put it. The Bible describes her as having no light in her eyes, which is the meanest, most poetic way to call someone an uggo. So, since Rachel's sister is unmarried because obviously she's a dirty, hideous woman, maybe editorializing a little here, after Jacob works the 7 years to earn Rachel's hands, in the middle of the night on their wedding day, his uncle switches out Rachel for her older sister Leah, and Jacob sleeps with Leah. And because he sleeps with Leah, he then has to marry her. And he's like, yo, I didn't want to marry this ugly woman. No one wants to marry this ugly woman. That's why she's unmarried. And his uncle Laban is like, well, we're not going to marry the younger daughter without marrying the first one. So you slept with her, you have to marry her. Which, again, another porn situation, huh? First of all, Jacob, how do you not just see you're sleeping next to a different woman? But Jacob is like, well, I'll work another 7 years and I'll marry Rachel as well. So he works another 7 years and finally marries Rachel, which he loves her way more than Leah. It says that in the Bible. But Rachel couldn't have kids, and Leah could. So Leah bore 4 children to her. And every time she had a son, she was like, I hope Jacob will finally love me. And he never does. He never does. Every time he has a daughter, every time they have a daughter, by the way, it's whatever. It's like, they always look at the daughter like, this won't buy Jacob's love. It's a stupid woman. Jacob loves penis. Again, the whole situation, mad porny. Mad porny. I feel really bad for Leah here. One, because no one will marry her because she's a stupid, ugly, hideous, probably racist, deformed, mentally ill woman. But also, all she wants is for Jacob to acknowledge her, and he just never does. And look, I've ghosted a couple people in my life, and and I've been ghosted, and it sucks either way. But I will say this: hey, don't ghost someone you have 4 children with, and that you are also currently living with. That's a level of ghosting I can't even... What do you even call that? Poltergeisting? It's insane. I mean, and then chapter 30, you just feel so bad for Rachel. Um, Not Rachel, with Leia. So again, chapter 30. This is the. I'll end it here. Um, this is again super porny situation. So Rachel is not allowed. Rachel can have a baby, right? And Leia can't. So Rachel then offers Jacob her servant to have children with. So Jacob has children with her servant, and Rachel claims those children as her own. And is like, hey, I'm giving Jacob sons, and then Leah or Leia, I'm gonna say Leia sees this, and she stops being able to have kids, and she goes, "Oh man!" So she offers her servant to Jacob, and Jacob's like, "Yes, I don't have to sleep with this ugly, hideous, racist, deformed, mentally ill, poor woman, right?" And he has sons with Leia's servants, and then Leia claims those servants' children as her own. And then one day, this is what's crazy. One day, Leia's son Reuben is collecting mandrakes, and Rachel wants the mandrakes, and Leia's like, "No, you stole my husband. You can't steal my son's mandrakes." And Rachel goes, "Well, I'll let you sleep with Jacob tonight if you let me have those mandrakes." And Leia goes, "Yes, I will do that." And she gets pregnant, and she has another son, and she's like, "Jacob will finally love me now, right?" And Jacob was like, "No, I'll never love a hideous, racist, ugly, lifeless, deformed, mentally ill, the hunchbacked, poor, dusty, ashy-kneed, cross-eyed, asthmatic." I said dumb. I'll say dumb again. Lacking in intellect, stubby woman like you, Leia. He says that. That's a direct quote. And yeah, he does. He ends up never loving her. How crazy is that? How crazy is that? Leia, if you're listening to this, I feel sorry for you. You deserved a little bit better. And he didn't have to call you all those mean things. He didn't have to do that. And then Jacob gets wealthy off sheep at the end of the chapter. There's this weird scheme he does. Him and Laban are sort of like, his uncle are sort of like scheming against each other. Jacob's a schemer. Jacob is a schemer. I will say that. So like the sheep thing is like, so Jacob goes to Laban and says, "I've been working for you for 21 years, basically. Let me have your sheep, and I will only take the sheep that are marked with a black marking, or like they have marks or stripes on their legs and stuff." And Laban says, "Okay." And then Laban gives all those sheep away before Jacob can take them to his own sons. And then Jacob sort of finds a way to fake those sheep or genetically he sort of eugenics the sheep to make so that the strong ones have the markings that he can take and the weak ones stay with Laban. And then so he becomes rich. It's hard to explain. But yeah, he's a schemer. And that's where I'll end today. I feel bad for Leia. You know, it's just look, this is very smutty. At the end of the day, the amount of sex that happens in all this is pretty insane. Like, there's no, like, the amount of sex in Genesis is crazy for especially for a Christian culture in America that is very conservative sexually. And yet when you read the book, it's like every other page. I mean, Jacob married both his cousins. It's not even regular smut. This is dirty smut. If Harry Potter had this much smut in it, it would never get as popular today. I mean, it's a bad example because they're children in Harry Potter, but like, you know, it's interesting that like something this smutty is so influential to a very conservative people. So today we are going to continue with the Bible. Yep, as you know, we are reading through the Old Testament, New Testament, Quran. And then from there, we'll probably go on to like the Mormon Bible and then the Bhagavad Gita. I hope I'm saying that right. If I'm not, whatever. But yeah, this is my series on just the summary of the religious texts. That's what we're doing. At the end of Genesis, I'll pile all the Genesis clips together. It'll probably end up being an hour and a half, and put them all on YouTube separately as well. So if you just want to go through Genesis with me, you can. All right. So this will be chapters 31 through 40 of Genesis. For those of you who are like, what happened when we last left off? It's been a while. All right. So Jacob is staying at his uncle Laban's place. He's tricked into marrying both of his cousins, the Rachel, which is the pretty one who he wanted to marry, and then Leah, who the Bible goes out of the way to tell you that she's plain, ugly, even the hunchbacked, poor, has got bad teeth, slurps too loudly when she drinks soup. Leah doesn't know how to look for deals online. She's bad at that. She always plays full price for things. She doesn't know what coupons are. She's just just a bad wife, And so he marries both of them. They get into this weird having kids war with each other. Leah and Rachel, they both want to have his sons. Leah especially more so because she's just trying to win his favor so badly, so much so that and it's never gonna happen because she's always got food in her teeth or something like that. The Bible goes out of the way to mention how not cool Leah is. And then Jacob is trying to leave working for his uncle Laban with his two wives, and there's his uncle says you can take whatever sheep you want as long as they're striped sheep. So Jacob does this thing where he breeds only the strongest sheep to be striped. He pulls a trick on Laban so that when he leaves, he will have the better flock. And that's where we left off. Let's see. So, chapter 31, Laban's children get mad at Jacob for pulling that stunt, and God tells Jacob to go back home. Rachel and Leah agree with Jacob that he should leave because Laban has wasted Rachel and Leah's inheritance and treats them, quote, like foreign women. Can you imagine your own father treating you like a foreign woman? Ugh, gross, dude. That would suck. Treat me like a domestic, parents. They leave without telling Laban, and then Rachel steals Laban's shears. Laban catches up with Jacob, but God tells him not to hurt him. So Jacob was like, fine, God tells you not to hurt me, but if you think I stole something, go and search all the tents. So Jacob goes and searches all the tents, and then he gets to Rachel's tent, who actually did steal something, right? So Rachel, with what I would like to describe as a 10,000 IQ play, sits on top of the shears, and then so she puts them in a sack, and then on top of the shears, and then she puts the shears in a sack, and it sits on top of him while her father is searching her tent. And her father's like, why aren't you getting up? And she tells him, genius, she tells him that she is on her period. At least this is what I use the modern version. I don't use the King James version because I don't say verily. So why would I read the version that says verily? And at that point, that's not even close to the first version of the Bible. So why not just use the modern one? And so this modern version said she tells Laban that she's on her period and she doesn't get up. And Laban's like, oh, woman stuff, gross, and it doesn't check. So good, so good. What a smart, she must have, when she thought of that, she must have been giggling to herself. Dude, my dad won't come anywhere near this. Great play. Great play. If there were SportsCenter top 10 for the Bible, dude, that would be it. She sat on those shears, and then from the heavens came, ba-da-na, na-na-na. Even God was like, that's a good one, Rachel. That's a good one. Jacob gives Laban a talking to after all this, hey man, you were kind of a dick to me. Laban is a dick. That's the only good way to describe him. He changes Jacob's wages all the time. He tricks Jacob into marrying the ugly daughter, which, come on, don't do that. Interesting. He's interesting. Like I've always wondered, like why some names from the Bible you see all the time, like Rachel. That's a name you see all the time. Leah. That's a name you see all the time. But you don't see certain names, and like I get why you wouldn't see Laban. I wouldn't want to put that on the kid. Laban is a terrible person. He does not come off good at all. Even back with Isaac and Rebecca, there was some weird stuff going on with Laban. Oh, Rebecca has to stay an extra 10 days to say bye to the family. He's a control guy. He can't live without control. I mean, and it's tough in a world of God, right? In a setting where God is king, it's like a control guy is never going to come off as a good person because God, because all the protagonists in this submit to God, and Laban, while he listens to God, is not the submitting type, and I think that's why he comes off as a bad person. And so Jacob and Laban then make a very 90s sitcom-y, make a boundary line that they say they can't cross. You know those 90s sitcoms where you're like, you can't go on this side of the room, and then hijinks ensues because the door's on her side of the room, and yada, yada, yada. That sort of stuff. I was thinking of a Full House episode specifically when I thought about this. That is what Laban and Jacob do. So, Hollywood and their remakes, huh? You can't. Even when I thought they were being original, there it turns out they were just copying the Bible. All right, that's chapter 31. Chapter 32. So Jacob learns that he's in Esau's county now. His brother, his brother who's just. Esau I feel weird about because there's a couple things. He gives up his right as a firstborn to get some stew early, which I thought was always lame. And then he got mad about that. It's like, dude, your mom wasn't not going to feed you. You could just have the stew later. You didn't need the stew now. Right? So I don't like him for that. But then Jacob does trick him and steals the blessings that he was supposed to get as the firstborn, and I thought that was messed up. So Esau, I'm sort of up in the air about. But Jacob learns he's in Esau's country. He's in Esau's country, and now Esau's coming to meet him with troops. So Jacob sends him an offering. The next day, while he's waiting for Esau's troops to come, Jacob crosses the river with his family and then sort of like chills in a place by himself. And a man comes out of nowhere and just sort of wrestles with him. All night. They wrestled till dawn. I've said this again. I've said this before. There's a lot of sort of porny scenes in the Bible. And, I mean, this is just right up there with that. That is what? Just a random guy starts wrestling with you, and you guys wrestle till dawn? Crazy. No questions asked, too. The dude starts wrestling, and Jacob's like, all right, we're going. We're doing this. The guy, turns out, thank God, happens to be God. Whew, that was a close one. That's a close one. Especially knowing how many people in the world use God's name to illegally, quote unquote, wrestle with someone. Whew, Jacob, you got lucky here, buddy. You gotta be careful with what strangers you wrestle with all night. Jacob doesn't submit, and then at dawn the man is like, I gotta go, and Jacob's like, no, you gotta bless me. Money shot. You gotta bless me. And then God's like, fine, I'll bless Jacob, and I'm gonna change your name. Your name is now Israel. And he injures Jacob hips for whatever. He gives him a nice hip shot at the end. Yeah, just be like, hey, I'm God, so don't remember I could mess you up anytime. You idiot. You Israel. Screw you. But yeah. So that's the God wrestling with all night with Jacob scene. Just sort of let that one sink in, huh? That's chapter 33. Esau meets up with Jacob and he's happy. Esau tries to get Jacob to keep his gift. Jacob says, no, you keep it. And Esau was like, here, follow me back. I'll take you back to my country. And Jacob says, I got you, Esau. And so Esau goes one way, and then Jacob follows for a bit and goes the other way because he is always tricking his brother. Jacob is only a good guy because God tells you he's a good guy. Jacob is very much like Loki. He's a chaotic good. Although Loki might be like neutral. But Jacob is a chaotic good. He makes these decisions that screw over his brother all the time. I'm sure it seemed like the vibe I was getting that his brother was finally happy to see his kid. He said I was finally happy to see his kid brother. I could be wrong though. You don't show up with 400 troops. You show up with 400 troops to send some kind of message, I guess. Right, so Jacob goes to another place. So at this other place, they're very specific with their names. The names of these places, I didn't write them down because it's just too much. It's just too much for me. The world, you know how like in certain fantasy books they give you a map at the beginning of the book, so you sort of know where everything is. I've seen a map of Westeros before for Game of Thrones. They sort of need that for the Bible because they say these names and I have such hard time visualizing where they are. Because they almost never say where they are in relation to the other place. They just say how far away it is. You know? I don't know if things are west or east. I don't know which direction Jacob went. I just know he went away from the place where he lived with Laban. That's all I know. So, chapter 34, this is a big one. All right. So one day, a local prince, either Sachem is the prince's name or the place is Sachem. I don't quite remember. His daughter Dinah gets raped by the local prince, and the prince then falls in love with her, right? Which is crazy, and then tries to win her affection with tender words. Which, hey, man, you've lost this, huh? Hey, I've never been in a relationship, but hey, Prince of Sachem, if you are in love with a girl and want to win her over, you probably shouldn't rape her first. Just gonna go out on a limb and be like, bad play. Should have talked to your friends about that one, huh? But you'll see this prince is just the king of... This prince and his dad are the kings of terrible decisions. All right. So he asks his dad to go talk to Jacob to, set it up. Like, hey, Dad, I know I raped this girl, but now I'm too nervous to talk to her. So you go ahead and set up our marriage. And, what's it called? Jacob's father and brother says, no, you can't marry this girl because you're uncircumcised, which of course is, if I had a daughter and someone did that to her, I would also be like, well, he was uncircumcised. But we will consent to the marriage, which is crazy, if every male in the local town gets circumcised. And then his dad and the prince and his dad convince every dude in the city to get circumcised. And they say, okay, we'll do it, which is like, the level of simping in that is just unreal. Like, you're trying to impress a girl so much, all your boys get circumcised? Insane. And then, 3 days later, when everyone's still sort of sore and limping around from, getting a part of their penis cut off, Jacob and his sons go through town and murder everybody. They kill all the males, which makes sense. They did that to your daughter/sister. Now, here is the interesting thing. I actually looked up what it said on the King James Bible, right? Because I was like, does the King James Bible says Dinah gets raped? And in the King James version, they said Dinah gets spoiled, but they don't say if the spoiling, quote unquote, is consensual or not. And so my question is this, and this is like a real, actual, like, if any theologian can answer this, I'm actually curious. Did the Prince of Sachem, or Sachem, I forgot his name, actually rape Dinah? Or did he just have sex with her? And in the time, having sex before marriage, and especially in the Bible, is so looked down on that the only answer for Jacob and his sons was to kill everyone. And does the new version say rape because it's easier for us as a modern society to handle Jacob and his son's response to this because it makes sense in that context? Right, in a modern society, that's how you would expect a son and father to feel about that happening to the daughter. But is that something we added now to make what happened more palatable? Because the other way around, if they just had sex and they weren't married, and it's like this still in the olden days, that was this thing where like, oh, this deserves death. Well, that's not really palatable for modern audiences, is it? I mean, it might not even be palatable for audiences back then. Sex is sex. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. It's an interesting. That was chapter 34. It was just an interesting scene. It was just an interesting difference in the translations. Maybe unspoiled at the time meant unconsensual, but it could have absolutely been consensual. There is just this sort of, you read the Bible and the way they look at women are just they're just sort of these, clearly secondary citizens. They're like, whatever. So in their time, like, oh, in the time that they wrote the King James Version, they might be thinking, oh, women don't have the capacity to make that choice. And because the man is the man, he pressured her into that situation. But that's not obviously, that's not necessarily true. So there's really two interpretations of what happened here in chapter 34. It's like either the Prince of Sachem had it coming and, hey, don't do that, or the Prince of Sachem got a really raw deal. Either way, he should have been confident enough to just talk to her. Well, I guess not. I don't know. Because if he did do the crime, then of course he's not going to want to talk to her. So maybe he did. Maybe he did. I don't know. Just something to think about, Chapter 35, God tells Jacob to move to Bethel and build an idol. God renames him Israel again because I guess for some reason Jacob just forgot that he wrestled with a man randomly all night and he needed to be reminded. You know how it is. Rachel dies, leaving Bethel in childbirth to a child she named Benjamin. So Jacob is left with Leah, as the Bible tells you, is the ugly, no good, very bad, terrible, hunchback, poor, buck-tooth, overbite, acne-ridden, herpetic, plain, let's say plain again, double plain, cross-eyed, hairy, 5'11", no, 6'11", just slanted, like terrible cold eyes, heart, and bad breath wife Leah. He's left with her, and at some point, one of his sons sleeps with his concubines. They just sort of mention that. I think you're supposed to be like, oh, so terrible, but it's just not relatable. Who has concubines anymore, huh? Only people who have concubines are dictators. And then Isaac, at the end of it, dies at 180. So he lives a good, long life comparative to us, sort of shorter life compared to a lot of the characters in Genesis, especially when you get to like a Methuselah who's like 900 years old, Chapter 36 Esau is just a list of Esau and his descendants. So we can just skip over. That's just names. Chapter 37. So Jacob loves his son Joseph the most, even though Joseph is a snitch. He tells on his son a lot. Which, if I had like a bunch of kids and one of them was a snitch, I would actually have to tell him. As someone who grew up as an only child and didn't know how bad tattletaling was until you did it in like elementary school. I tell him like, hey man, don't snitch. That's not a thing you want to do. You want to have a good relationship with your brothers. No one likes a snitch ever. That's why That's why That's why cops don't testify against each other. It's just a natural thing. You don't snitch against your own team. So Jacob planned favorites make Joseph a robe, and his brothers hated him for it. And then Joseph has a dream where he's the king. He has a couple dreams, I think, where he's a king and all his brothers are bowing down to him. And he tells his brothers, which make his brothers even more angry, which like, hey, Joseph, come on. Read the room. For those of you who know Joseph's story and what's about to happen, it's like, hey, buddy, like, not saying you deserve what happened to you, but like, if you paid attention, you would be like, something's up and I should be careful. And this dude was just like, la-di-da-di-da, I'm going to be your king and you all hate me, but I'm going to tell you twice. Joseph meets his brother who are out tending sheep in a farm somewhere or in a pasture somewhere. Jacob sends him out there. The original plan is to kill him and throw his body down a well. But just so they throw his body down the well and they're like, oh, we can't kill him. He is still our brother and he's our father's favorite. So instead they sell him into slavery to some Egyptians. And then his brothers tell Jacob that Joseph was torn apart by a wild animal. Like they bring back a bloody part of the robe and be like, oh, this is what happened to your favorite son. Oh no, bloody animal or all bloody wild animal. It's crazy. But yeah, he sold in slavery. One of the brothers I forgot which one has remorse and doesn't want to do it. But, peer pressure is tough, man. Especially if everyone wants to murder and you're the one brother that doesn't want to murder. And then you see what they do to the brother that goes against the clan. You're like, oh, fuck, I kind of have to, like, be a part of this. I forgot the brother's name. I should have looked it up. But I feel bad for him. He was stuck in a rock and a hard place. His plan was to go, when they dropped him out of the well, was to go and fetch Jacob and bring him back. That was his plan. He had no idea that his other brothers didn't turn around and sold him into slavery. Which, hey, if you don't like your brothers, harass them. Don't sell them into slavery, huh? And then chapter 38, we learn about Judah, who is related to Jacob somehow. I don't know. There's so many names. But this is sort of like a weird sort of like non sequitur chapter. So Judah has two sons, and Onan. Was wicked and God killed him. So the law required Onan to have a son with Er's wife, and Onan didn't want to. And so right when he was about to have a son with the wife, Onan, quote, pulls out and spills his seed on the ground, which again, porny, right? And then God gets so mad that he kills Onan because, what a wicked thing that you don't want to have children with your dead brother's wife. You're the bad guy for that, Onan. You're the bad guy, and I hope you know that. And then Er's wife becomes a prostitute, and Judah sleeps with her, and she gets her pregnant, and she has twins. So she tricks her father-in-law into thinking she's a prostitute when she's not, to have babies with him. But God doesn't kill her, which, I feel two ways about. Finally a woman gets to have her way over a dude on this. Thank God. Well, no, that's not true. It happens every once in a while. Lot's daughters sort of rape him. But, go sis, I guess. But also, if Onan is a bad guy for spilling his seed on the ground, for not wanting to have kids with his wife, the wife is sort of a bad guy for tricking her father-in-law into having kids with her. right? It's just a weird, and that it's literally Genesis 38 is this weird contained chapter where they tell that story, which, makes you feel certain ways. It's a weird story. It's a rough. Yo, I said this the second when I read chapters, I think 11 through 20 or 11 through 19. I was harsh when I first started. I was like, I can't believe people take this literally, and then I sort of reset in my mind, and be like, no, faith is important, and let's just read the story and see where this goes. And this Genesis at the very least is lit. These are some stories, dude. These are some stories. To whoever, I guess Moses thought of these, at least wrote them down, but these are stories. I was in the chapter 38. I was invested in the whole thing. I was like, I can't. There's some weird Bible soap opera drama thing happening, and I can't believe who died, who got away with it. It's wild. Who's having babies with who? It's crazy. Genesis is lit, dude. Genesis is lit. Take that away. Take that away from all this. I might just clip that. Just be like, Genesis is lit, and just put it out on face, whatever. I'm gonna stop using Instagram, I think, as much. That's why I feel whatever about it. All right, chapter 39. We're back to Joseph after that weird soap opera that we had, the soap opera intermission. Joseph was brought up to the captain of the guard for the Pharaoh. I forgot his name. Potiphar. Potiphar noticed that Joseph was in the favor of the Lord and made Joseph his personal assistant. So Potiphar's wife then tries to sleep with Joseph, but Joseph, he ain't no simp. Joseph is like, no, you're my boss's wife. I'm not gonna sleep with you. One day she tried. She grabbed him by his cloak and he ran. And when he ran, she grabbed the cloak off and he ran through the town naked. And then she used the cloak as evidence that Joseph tried to come in and rape her. She was like, Joseph forced himself on me. I was able to get away, and I grabbed his cloak as proof. And Joseph is thrown in prison, but the warden of the prison loved Joseph and put him in charge of the other prisoners. He saw that he was in the favor of God. Now, this story is important because going back to chapter, I believe, 34, the Dinah story, it brings into the question again, because Potiphar's wife clearly is wicked. She lied. She made a false accusation. They believed her because she's a high-ranking official. Joseph is, in the end, just a slave, so he's gonna get no love from any sort of legal system that they have there. But it brings the question: is what happened with Dinah? Was she a victim of a crime, or was she like Potiphar's wife? I want to believe, reading this story and just basing it off the breadth of the differences of characters in Genesis, like the characters are all so vastly different. I do believe that Dinah was a victim of a crime just because of this, but it's still like, that has to be the most controversial moment so far of the thing. Of Genesis, of one that really makes you think, like, what is the morality of this situation really? With Potiphar's wife, it's very cut and dry. I haven't seen the King James version, but I would imagine the King James version painted Potiphar in this light. Potiphar's wife, sorry. So chapter 40, the Pharaoh throws the baker and his cupbearer into the prison with Joe. And then Joe has dreams for both the baker and the cupbearer. And Joseph. My God, I got so comfortable with Joseph, I named him Joe in my notes. Joseph interprets the cupbearer's dream, and he says the cupbearer will be back in the Pharaoh's favor, and to put in a good word with the Pharaoh for Joseph when he's back in the favor. The baker, he interprets the baker's dream, and he says the baker's was negative, and he said the baker would be impaled on a pole, which was what happened to the baker. So the cupbearer goes back into the good favor with the Pharaoh, and then forgets all about Joseph. Which I get it, dude. You're the cupbearer. You see what happened to the baker. You're like, that could have been me for no reason. I'm thrown into jail for no reason. Here I am, with the slave. The slave tells me what's gonna happen. You probably should remember, but you're probably at that point. You're not trying to rock the boat. I don't know if the cupbearer forgot it so much as like, hey, I'm not gonna piss off the guy that impaled his baker, dude. What possibly could the baker have done? He's a baker to deserve getting impaled on a pole. If I'm the cupbearer, I'm forgetting too. I'm not talking about Joseph. I'm like, hey, I am keeping my head down. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm glad I'm in this position, and I'm going to leave it at that. And that's the end of chapter 40. That's 31 through 40 of Genesis. Next time I do this, I don't know when it'll be. I think I'm going to do a presidential dick energy next. It's been a while since I've done that. But the next time I do this, it'll be the last 10 chapters of Genesis, and then I'll put them all together for you guys on YouTube and release that as a separate video. But this, of course, will be another episode of the Dangerous Brown Podcast. Happy New Year's, infidels. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me on today's Friday episode of the Dangerous Brown Podcast. Let's hop right into it. We are finishing off Genesis. It's been a while since I did this. I think the last one was late November. I did Genesis chapter 31 through 40. And I promise, you know what? I'm probably going to start making them a little closer together. I usually do about one a month, but maybe I'll do a little bit more than that just so we can go through it a little faster and y'all can remember the story a little better, because I realized I have to do a little bit of a recap on what happened last time. So if you listen back to the last episode, I just want to quickly touch on one of the chapters that I brought up. Chapter 34, I believe it was. I should have looked back on it, but it's in there somewhere. Where Jacob's daughter Dinah gets raped. And I talk about in the episode is, did she get raped, or was it a consensual act that when her family found out as a non-married woman that she had, they went sort of crazy, right? And I flip-flop back and forth because I thought I have been thinking about it over this month, and I flip-flop back and forth between, of course, I mean, I'm sure there's religious scholars that could tell me. Obviously, there's more books than my contemporary English version of the Bible, but this is all I'm getting from my read through of it. And sometimes I believe something terrible happened to her, and the other times I'm like, maybe not. Maybe this was an overreaction based on cultural norms at the time. And the reality is, the conclusion I came up with is that there is no way for us to know what happened without Dinah's account of the situation. At the end of the day, unless we don't hear from her, we don't know. And in a weird way, not in a weird way, she is 100% silenced through the story because she doesn't get to tell her version of the story. And I've noticed this about Genesis, is that the women in Genesis aren't particularly strong. And that's not like an indictment on women, obviously, an indictment on women that I'm saying, oh, women aren't strong. I'm saying in Genesis, they are not. It's just clear, like, other creation mythologies have strong women, for sure. I mean, if you look at the ancient Greeks, they have Athena as the goddess of war and all their goddesses. The Hindus have so many, goddesses. The ancient Egyptians, goddesses on goddesses, And that strong female character just does not exist in Genesis. It just doesn't. At best, the women in Genesis are tricksters. Eve tricks Adam. Rebecca tricks Esau. Rachel tricks her dad by pretending she's on her period, and her dad is like, ugh, period's gross. Lot's daughters rape him. Like, these are really the, like, quote-unquote strongest women in Genesis, and at best they're like these Loki-like figures. There isn't like a like an Athena. There isn't. They all need a man's help. At best they're tricksters. Usually they're just sort of cast aside and not thought of. This is a very male-dominated story, but, like, the other mythologies have male-dominant stories, but they still have strong female leads. And I know you might get mad. I know there might be some calling them mythologies, but I'm trying, take look at it like a step back, and how people maybe 10,000 years from now will read the Bible. I know that's tough because that's what some of you believe in, but I'm just trying to take a sort of level-headed approach to reading this. So, anyways, let's get back. Here's chapters 41 through 50, the end of Genesis. We are here. Just a little recap. What had happened was, where we're at in the story, Joseph, Jacob's son, been sent off to Egypt. His brothers, out of jealousy, sold him into slavery. He was doing well, and he was doing well in Egypt. He was working for this guy named Potiphar, I believe his name was. I could easily look, but I'm not going to. And then Potiphar's wife is making advances at him. He refuses. Potiphar's wife then falsely accuses him of, just falsely accuses him, which, again, sort of adds to my point of women in Genesis are either tricksters or cast aside. He ends up in jail. There he meets the Pharaoh's cupbearer and the Pharaoh's baker in jail. He interprets their dreams, tells the baker that the baker's going to die. Baker dies, tells the cupbearer that he's going to live. He asks the cupbearer once he lives to put in a good word for him with the Pharaoh. Cupbearer lives, but completely forgets about Joseph, who's just chilling in jail, which is somewhat understandable. You're happy you're alive. The Pharaoh, the person with the supreme being, has granted you life. But this is where we are. So, chapter 41, 2 years after those events. Now, this is where I have a problem with the cupbearer. Sure, immediately you forget about Joseph, maybe. You're just so happy to be alive. But at a certain point, remember, you're telling me once in that 2 years you didn't think back to your jail experience and the guy who helped you get through it? 2 years later, cupbearer, you're selfish, man. You're selfish. And I ain't afraid to call you out on camera. You're selfish. Pharaoh has a dream about 7 skinny cows eating 7 healthy cows. Then the next day the Pharaoh has a dream about 7 withered grain stalks eating 7 healthy ones. So the Pharaoh asks the people, his court around him, to interpret his dreams. No one can do it. And then the cupbearer finally remembers Joseph. It took you that long. Also, you didn't think about your jail time at all? You didn't think about dreams at all? Like, when you had a dream, you weren't like, oh, wait, yeah, there's a guy who helped me interpret this. I went from, being like, I get where the cupbearer's coming from, to being like, hey, cupbearer, you're garbage, dude. You're garbage. I don't take a lot of hard stances. I take a lot of hard stances on this podcast, but all of them, remember, take everything you hear here with a grain of salt. Nothing here is serious, but this is serious. This is an anti-cupbearer podcast. All of my positions you can attack me for, and everything you've heard on the podcast you can break down. That's fine. But we're anti-cupbearer here, infidels. The sleeper cell has no cupbearers. 0 cupbearers allowed. This is one guy ruined it for all y'all cupbearers. This is an anti-cupbearer podcast. So the Pharaoh talks to Joseph finally because, his bitch-ass friend remembers. And Joseph tells him that the dream means there's going to be 7 years of prosperity followed by 7 years of intense famine. That's so the withered cows eating the healthy cows. And the intense famine is going to be so bad that people are going to forget the prosperous years. That's why it's eating them. So he tells the Pharaoh to collect 1/5 of the crops and save him for the famine. And as a result, the Pharaoh makes Joseph second in command. And he gives him an Egyptian name and an Egyptian wife, where he has 2 Egyptian kids. And the famine happens, and people end up buying grain from Joseph, from the stores that they collect. So he knew the famine was coming. He collected 1/5 of the grain and then sold it to the people during the famine. This is, I believe, the biblical version of The Big Short. If you've seen that movie, The Big Short, it's based on the 2008 financial crisis. It's also based on chapter 41 of Genesis. Nothing is original. Even an economic collapse in 2008. The Bible did it first. So, Joseph, chapter 41 ends with Joseph, doing his Christian Bale impression and big shorting the Egyptians. Chapter 42, Jacob, who I believe lives in the land of Canaan or, a Hebrew land, sends his sons, Joseph's brothers who sold him into slavery, to go to Egypt because his region is also experiencing a famine to buy grain. Mm-hmm. So Joseph's brothers show up in front of Joseph. His brothers don't recognize him, but Joseph does. So chapter 42, we start playing this weird will they won't they game. Like if you've ever watched Friends, you know how Ross are this and the sitcom trope of will they won't they get together, won't they get together, that sort of thing. Joseph here, instead of being like brothers, goes, all right, my brothers don't recognize me, let me play this will they won't they game. Will they recognize me, will they not recognize me, for the next few chapters. So let's see how this game plays out, this 90s sitcom plays out. So he accuses them of being spies, and then so when Joseph sends his sons, he doesn't send his youngest son. When Jacob sends his sons to go see Joseph to buy the grain, he doesn't send his youngest son, Benjamin. He keeps Benjamin back because he fears for Benjamin's life, because he thinks the sons have something to do with what he perceives as Joseph's death. And he loves Joseph and Benjamin more than the other sons because they are the sons of his favorite wife, Rebecca. Rebecca is the hot one, the pretty one. The other sons, I believe, are the sons of Leah, the ugly, average, stupid, inbred, insolent, smelly breathed, club-toed sham of a wife that was Leia. If you're confused by that, listen to the other episodes of the Bible. You'll see where that's coming from. These are all direct quotes from the Bible, I should say, from Genesis. So he holds Benjamin back. Joseph then accuses his brothers of being spies when they come by the grain. So they said, to prove you're not spies, go back and bring your younger brother. I'm going to keep one of you, Simeon, one of his brothers, hostage until you bring back your younger brother. Let's see. So he sends all of them back with the grain. And so he sends all of them back with grain. He said give them sacks of grain to go back to. And in that grain, he actually puts the money back that they were supposed to pay. And the brothers... that doesn't happen yet. Sorry. So the brothers talk about the violence they caused Joseph in front of Joseph, thinking that they're being punished for causing that violence. And Joseph obviously can understand them. They're speaking a different language. They don't think this Egyptian guy can understand it, but Joseph understands them. He cries. So now Joseph gives them their grain, returns them with the money, puts the money in the bag, doesn't tell them. They find the money in the bag on the way back home, and they think they're being punished, pretty much. Jacob, like I said, doesn't want to send Benjamin back with them, and the brothers say, no, send him with us. We'll take care of him. Mm-hmm. That's the end of chapter 42. Chapter 43, the famine continues. The other brothers guarantee Benjamin's safety. Jacob's like, fine, go. Take double the money because he gave you the money back. I don't think he meant to do that. You're going to get accused of stealing, so take double the money. Which, I don't know how people are making money if there's no famine. I assume that crops were the number one way to make money back in that time. But hey, these people got money. When Joe sees Benjamin, he invites the brothers. When Joe, I call him Joe. You know, me and Joseph from the Bible. We're on nickname basis. When Joseph sees Benjamin, they arrive in Egypt again. He invites the brothers to a feast. They're terrified about going into Joseph's house, because they think it's a trap, because they're like, oh, he must think we stole the money. Simeon is released. When Joseph sees his younger brother, he weeps. He weeps a lot at this point. He's still playing this weird will they won't they game with them, though. He's still not telling them that he's Joseph. There's no reason for at this point why. When they sit and eat, Joseph sits at the table with Egyptians. The brothers are sat at a different table in their birth order, because Egyptians did not like dining with Hebrews, and Joseph gives Benjamin 5 times the food. All right, we're still in this weird will they won't they game. Chapter 44, is the reveal coming? Joseph fills their sacks, also gives them the money back, and fills their sacks with grain, to go take back to their home. He gives the money back, but places a silver cup in Benjamin's sack. from his kitchen, pretty much. So when the brothers leave the city, Joseph then sends his palace managers to go after them and ask why they stole the cup. And the brothers no one stole the cup. And then the palace manager searches all their bags, and they find the cup in Benjamin's bag, Benjamin's sack, which, again, very elaborate will they, won't they? Not very clear to me why he's doing it. At this point, just reveal yourself, I say, but, who am I to question this, actually? The one who stole the cup will be his slave. So when they find the cup in Benjamin's bag, Joseph is like, hey, we need Benjamin as a slave. The other brothers are like, no, you can't. We promised our father that we'd bring Benjamin back. Benjamin is his favorite, pretty much. Let us be your slaves instead. But Joseph says, or take all of us as your slaves with Benjamin. And Joseph says, no, only Benjamin. And Judah was like, hey, I can't let you take him because it would break our father's heart. Please take me instead, because I cannot face my father if I come back to Jacob without Benjamin. And now, in chapter 45, Joseph can't take it anymore, and this will they, won't they game is finally over. He stops weeping in front of his brothers because he can't take it. And then I just wrote down in my notes, brother reveal. Finally, after we start in 42, so this is pretty much the fourth chapter. This will they, won't they, this Ross-Rachel game between Joseph and his brother is finally over. Joseph finally reveals, hey, I'm your brother. Let's see. Tell them not to be. He tells them he's not angry with them for selling him into slavery because God sent them here. So God sent him here back then. So at this point, he could be the leader of Egypt or the protector of the land, pretty much, and save their lives. Tells them to go back and grab Jacob and, and bring him to Egypt because he is the master of Egypt. Now the Pharaoh hears news of Joseph's brothers arriving, tells Joe to bring his family over to Egypt. They will get the best land in all of Egypt. And, Joseph sends his brothers back to go get Jacob. He sends them with gifts. Jacob is delighted that Joseph, his favorite son, is alive. That's chapter 45. Chapter 46, on the way to Egypt, God comes to Jacob in a dream. Go to Egypt, you will die there with Jacob close. That's what God says. All of Jacob's descendants come as well. Jacob gets to Egypt. He finally embraces Joseph. Joseph tells his family to tell the Pharaoh that they are shepherds because Egyptians usually don't like shepherds for whatever reasons. Egyptians, they set the groundwork. So Exodus obviously is the story of Moses. That's what we'll start soon. But they set the groundwork in Genesis that the Egyptians don't think highly of the Hebrews. They definitely try to stay away from them. They're viewed as second-class citizens. They don't. A lot of Hebrews are shepherds. Egyptians look down on shepherds for whatever reason. But so they are sort of setting the stage. The way the Egyptians act throughout these first books sort of tracks, and their character motivations are pretty solid all the way through. Or not solid, they're not like good people, but they're consistent. I think that's what I should say. They're not like their dislike of the Hebrews in the next chapter doesn't come out of nowhere. They set it up in Genesis. Chapter 47, the Pharaoh lets Jacob and his families live in a place called Goshen. Jacob then blesses the Pharaoh, which if I was the Pharaoh, I'd be like, damn, the balls on this guy. I am the supreme being of this land, and this famine-stricken refugee is going to bless me? And the Pharaoh is like, this is awesome. The Pharaoh, the Jacob and Joseph's Pharaoh is, I wonder if it's the same Pharaoh as Exodus, because this guy's a relatively nice guy. He lets his prisoner become second in command. He lets Joseph become second in command and then invites his entire family of Hebrews, which the Egyptians don't like, live in their best plot of land. So this Pharaoh, I'm curious to see if this is the same Pharaoh in the next chapter, but we'll find out. It can't be. There's no way. Jacob is 130 at this point. The family is so severe, Joseph collected all the money in Egypt. All the money was used to pay for his grains. So then people would then trade livestock for food, and then people were out of livestock, so people then had to trade their land for food, and then themselves. So Joseph made pretty much everyone slaves, except for the priests. Priests didn't have to pay any sort of tax or pay for food because they were given stores of food by the pharaoh himself. But people became slaves to Jacob because they couldn't pay money for grain. And so at the beginning, Jacob big shorted the Egyptians to make all this money off of the famine. Now he's Jeff Bezosing the famine. Where you know how during this pandemic, Bezos and a group of billionaires have just, their value has skyrocketed during all this? That is what Joseph is doing. Great business play. And I know you're meant to look up to Joseph here because he did come from nothing and he turned his situations around. I'm not knocking him for that. But at the same time, if you're a regular Egyptian, you must be looking at this like, come on, give us a break. A little bit. But yeah, Joseph goes from Big Short to Bezos in this one. And, relatively few chapters. Chapter 47. He Big Shorts them in 41? 42? I think 41? I could, again, go back easily and look. It's just a page flip away, but I refuse to. I'll look since we're here. I can't be that lazy. I'm pretty lazy. I can't be that lazy. What does he Big Short him? You guys probably already remember and are screaming in your mind. Like, how do you forget? Like I said, nothing I say should be taken seriously. I'm an idiot. He Big Shorts them in 41. Hebrews are multiplying in Goshen. We're back in 47. And Jacob, who's dying, asks Joseph not to be buried in Egypt. He wants to be buried with his dad and Abraham, I believe, in the land of Canaan. The names of the places escape me because they're just so hard, some of them. There's apostrophes in some of the names, but I think it's Canaan. I'm not quite sure, if I'm being honest. So, in chapter 48, Jacob blesses Joseph's two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And it's a weird blessing where he says, Manasseh and Ephraim will be my sons, and the next sons you have will be yours, but my blessing basically makes them mine, even though they're my grandchildren. He blesses it so the younger one will be greater than the older one, which is something that you see in this family. In this family, the younger one, if you trace the lineage back, the younger one is always sort of greater than the older one. I mean, Abraham with Isaac. Isaac is his younger son. Isaac is his younger son. I don't know why I forgot that. Isaac's sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob is the one who gets the blessing. He's the younger son. Jacob with Joseph. All of Jacob's sons. Joseph is, I believe, the second youngest or close to the youngest. He is more blessed than his older brothers. And now Joseph's two sons, the younger brother, is blessed over the older brother. So this is something that happens in this family, and it's a very interesting sort of thing. You can follow the lineage down of the youngest sons are always more blessed than the oldest sons. Never once in this family, even though it's clearly established in tradition in this time, the oldest son is supposed to be the more blessed one. The youngest son is almost never the oldest son in this family is almost never the most blessed one. And that part of maybe why that makes his family special for whatever reason. But it is a choice that God has made with this important pivotal family to the world, that the younger sons will almost always be more blessed than the older sons. And so, 49, that's 48 is the blessing. 49, Jacob gives his last words to his sons. And you'll see the older ones sort of, the younger ones get like these sort of calm last words. He's basically describing their personalities. With the older ones, it's clear he doesn't like. Reuben is the firstborn, is unruly. He no longer gets the title of firstborn because he slept with one of Jacob's concubines, which, hey, dude, if you're your son, don't sleep with one of your dad's wives. That's a very big bro code breach, I would imagine. Simeon and Levi, they're the next two. They're angry and violent. And he basically says, I'm not really on your side. Judah is the fourth oldest. He's like a lion. He's a natural leader. He's the one who offered to be taken as a slave in Benjamin's place when that Ross, Rachel, will they, won't they game was happening. He will rule until the true ruler comes along. He will hold the scepter, which means he'll be the ruler. That's what Jacob says, until the true ruler comes on. Zebulun is going to live by the shore and harbor ships for life. That's pretty chill. Issachar is sturdy. He's good at hard labor. Dan, which is the most regular name out of all of them, is like a snake beside the road, which, damn, Daniel. Gad will be attacked by marauders at night. But he'll fight them off. These are interesting last words. Asher will eat well. Naphtali is like a doe. I don't know what that means, but he's like a doe. I guess he's pretty. I don't know. Joseph is like the foal of a wild donkey. You can attack him, but he stays strong. And then he prolongs to give Jacob blessings on blessings on blessings because he's the most successful son and he's the favorite son, clearly. And then Benjamin is like a ravenous wolf. He'll devour his enemies during the day and divide his plunder at night. And with that, Jacob dies. And the point I want to bring up again is how women are cast aside in this. Jacob gives no last words to his daughters. One of them, Dinah, is a pivotal character who, got raped. And Jacob does not mention her. I am curious to see how women are written in these later books coming up, but if it's anything like Genesis, I don't have high hopes for them to be really any sort of strong female character throughout the rest of this reading. I hope I'm wrong. It would be cool to have like an Athena-like figure in the Old Testament. Chapter 50, we're here at the end of Genesis. Jacob embalms his father. The Egyptians mourn for 70 days. The Pharaoh permits Joe to go and bury Jacob where he wants because this Pharaoh's chill as hell. Jacob's brother, when he goes to come back after burying his dad, his brothers fear that Joseph will get revenge on them now that their father's out of the way. They thought, oh, he's being nice to us because our father's still alive. He sends them a message to forgive them. They offer to be his slaves again. And Joseph reassures them, speaks kind of like, hey, what's in the past is past. Remember, God put me here to save your lives in the future. So it all sort of, even though you were terrible to me when you were younger, it all sort of worked out for our family in the end. Joseph lives to 110. And he tells his brother, when God leads him back to the land he promised Abraham, to please take his bones with them. That is how Genesis ends. If you've been following it since the beginning with me, you can tell like, oh, this was a really interesting story. I enjoyed it. It was a good story. I enjoyed breaking it down. This comes out New Year's Day, guys. Hope hope our 2021 turns around. I hope 2020 was the year of early Joseph, where he gets sold into slavery, and then 2021 for all of us here at the Sleeper Cell is the year where Joseph becomes second in command of Egypt. So there is lessons. There's always the beauty of this and reading this is that there are constantly lessons in this for modern day. That is why people still worship, use this as a book of worship. That's why this book is still important. That's why it's important we read it. That the stories in this, regardless of whether or not you believe, can be applied to obviously modern day. Happy New Year's, guys. If you don't want to go back, if you came in here and you're like, what is he talking about the rest of the earlier Genesis episodes, and you don't want to look for them, on Monday I'm going to post a compilation of just all the Genesises, so we can have the Genesi, I guess, the Genesis chapters, so you can just listen through all of them there. If you don't want to go back through them, if you want to go back, I would appreciate it. So the episode coming out Monday, if you're an avid listener and you've listened to all these episodes, you don't have to, unless you want to just listen to all Genesis back to back to back, so there aren't these large gaps in between them, because Genesis took me about 3-4 months to do. I'll try to do the Exodus a little quicker, but thank you guys for listening. Like, rate, subscribe, comment on the YouTube, donate to Wikipedia. Our donation count's still at 65, which is great. I'm not complaining about that at all. I very much appreciate you here at the Sleeper Cell, guys. I love you, infidels. See you Monday, I guess. Later, guys.